one thing we need to know is that no one is immune to mental health problems. होइन पागल भएको भन्ने चाहिँ भनिन्छ बट दिस इज अ बिग मिथ रिगार्डिङ मेन्टल इलनेस
So hello guys, we are back again, and today we'll be discussing on a very sensitive but a much needed topic of mental health issues. And to sensitize us further and to talk about this openly, we have Dr. Suman Prasad Adhikari with us. He's a consultant neuropsychiatrist. We are very pleased to have you, sir, and thank you so much for agreeing to come to this podcast so readily. And I think much of your insights will be help to each and every one of us who suffer from stressors in life. And because we all know that mental health matters, we need to have an open discussion about it. Thank you so much, sir, for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Prathana and Manita. It's my pleasure that you have given this platform to at least to create some awareness regarding mental illness and mental health issues. So that is great.
So first of all, we'd like to thank you for all your efforts in raising awareness about mental health. These recent times, it has highlighted its importance like never before. And we have also understood to some extent that we as a society needs to grow in becoming more welcoming and accepting of these conditions. And I think the impact that you as a psychiatrist can have is humongous, and the works you're doing, like advocating about mental health and suicide prevention. And I'm seeing all your works, and I genuinely feel so happy and so good. So thank you for all your efforts. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, so going on to our first question. So nowadays, mental health is raising awareness and everyone is being open about it, because in our Nepali society, mental health is always thought in extremes, like someone labels that person as being mad or psychotic, and they are called as bola bhayo, pagal bhayo. I mean, that was our definition of mental health, and many of us still hold that definition, but we as medical students are quite open to it as well. And there are a lot of conversations because of the power of the social media as well, and people have started becoming open. So I'd like to ask you that you as a psychiatrist might have seen all sides of the coin. Like, you know, the patient side of the story, you know the role of the caregiver, the perceptions of the society, and you might have analyzed in many different aspects. So where we as a Nepalese society are heading when it comes to mental health.
Okay, so first of all, we should know that every person go through some stressors during their lifetime, and those who are vulnerable, they will develop mental health issues. Okay, so talking about mental health is very important as it creates an environment where a person having some mental issues can seek help, and moreover, it makes mental health uh, illnesses and issues more acceptable in community or society. Okay, and it also helps them to cope with the issues in a positive way because there are many negative coping mechanisms that individuals use while dealing with the mental stress and illness, so that they become mentally ill. However, if they cope with it in positive way, they could avoid those illnesses. And when you try to hide some mental issues that you are having, it affects you in very negative way because it is also considered as a taboo in society and it is less acceptable. So when you talk about myths and misconceptions that are related to mental illness, then you will be able to remove the stigma surrounding the mental health. Okay, as you told earlier that when you mean mental illness, so when we say that somebody is suffering from mental health issue, the common perception is that the person might have gone crazy or insane, or as commonly used term is pagal, होइन पागल भएको भन्ने चाहिँ भनिन्छ. But this is a big myth regarding mental illness. There are many types of mental illness ranging from headache to anxiety, depression, and some severe forms like psychosis. Okay, so some of these illnesses, they can have being insane like picture, but that doesn't mean that we label them as insane or crazy or pagal. So yes, as a psychiatrist, I get to know about details of clients biopsychosocial aspect, that is biological, psychological and social aspect, and even the detailed psychopathology, that the phenomenon that is going inside clients brain. So, though stigma surrounding mental illness is very high, but I'm still optimistic that a day will come when we will start talking about mental illness as easily as we talk about physical illness, and we'll meet our psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist as easily as we meet our physician or a general practitioner. But for the time being, the situation is not that good. I must say that it is not that good because of the stigma surrounding the mental illness. But again, the cause for stigma is because it is less talked matter among the friends and families. Many of your friends might be having some mental health issues of anxiety, depression, or headache, but they won't talk to you openly about those issues because they fear being labeled as a case of anxiety or depression, and they usually feel shame if they let you know that they have just met a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And even the negative portrayal of these mental health issues in media, usually movies and songs and different newspapers, they also have played a role in increasing the stigma around this condition.
So, like, definitely, like as you said, even though we have understanding to some extent, we hesitate to share our problems or even go and talk to some friends if they're having any problems or not. But for someone like us, we really do want to contribute in promoting awareness or helping someone in need. But most of the time, as you said, we really do stand confused about our role, and we don't know how to spot if anyone is going through any problem, or even if we do that, we don't know how to approach. So as an individual, what kind of impact we can have, or how can we approach to situations like this?
So one thing we need to know is that no one is immune to mental health problems. As I said earlier, anyone in vulnerable situation can develop these conditions, and these conditions can develop during childhood, adolescence, adulthood, or even old age. Okay, and any person working in any place, like individual in home, school, or college environment, or you say security forces or navy or any place, the person is vulnerable to get these problems. And not talking about these health issues doesn't mean that they do not exist. Okay, so the first step is talking about mental health problems. For example, if you figure out there are some changes in individuals' thought, perception, or behavior that can be noticed by some outsider, then he must be having some issues related to his works or some problems in his family that is negatively uh, impacting him and causing the onset of mental illness. So if he or she asks for help, then you can talk about resources to him. You can talk about where he can meet a psychologist or psychiatrist, or where he can meet the similar groups or the close one with whom he can share his feelings. Okay, and we should discuss about the ways how you keep yourself mentally healthy and stable. Here the problem is that we do not want to talk about mental illness and mental health, so we do not usually follow the ways to keep us mentally healthy. We focus more on physical health. So, if individuals suffer from some mental health issues, we should respect them and show the acceptance. We should not be judgmental. We should not say that you are so strong. Why would you develop depression or anxiety? So that should not be told. And moreover, we should help in debunking different myths and misconceptions that are related to mental health and mental illness. As I told earlier, uh, So one of the common myth associated with mental illness is that if we start treatment, then they need to continue medicine for lifelong. However, this is not the situation. There are many conditions that get treated well, and we can stop medicine by 6 to 9 months, or even, let's say, 1 year. If the illness gets relapse multiple times, or if the illness is chronic, or if the individual has sought treatment after a long duration of onset of illness, then in that case, maybe he need to take medicine for more than 5 years or 10 years, or even lifelong. That depends on the individual circumstances. So these are the points I think we should focus on, so that we can spot the mental health issues in individual and help him get treated with the professionals like psychologists, psychiatrists, or psychosocial worker, or even counseling psychologist.
Thank you so much, sir, for the insight on that. So, while preparing for the podcast, we had gone through certain articles and we found out that prevalence of depression is more in medical students too, and it's around 27.2 as per one paper suggests, and there is 11.1% suicidal ideation, and it has been found that the prevalence of depression is more in these Middle Eastern countries, medical students here in Middle Eastern countries or Asian countries rather than Europe or USA. And I, as a medical student, can feel that. And we had also done a podcast regarding all of the stressors that we have in medical school, of studies, of staying away from our homes in a new environment, making new friends. But we were also surprised to find out that even after being so much aware of about these issues and knowing that mental health matters, the professionals in medicine are less likely to seek treatment from a psychiatrist, or even medical students are less likely to seek treatment. So what do you have to say on this, or what are the conditions that has led to this scenario?
Yeah, I agree with you in this context, that medical students, they usually have many stressors throughout their medical life, usually say medical school, and the stressors include large workload, and most of the time being invested in clinical environment, assignments and assessments, and they have less time for social and recreational activities. So they are likely to be victim of burnout, anxiety, depression, uh, but at the same time they uh, do not seek treatment at the earliest. It is again because of the stigma that is associated with mental illness. Though they do study mental illness and mental health to some extent in medical school, but again, that is not quite enough for them to seek professional help. So they fear that they might be evaluated as being fragile or having weak mind, or they even might fear having negative impact on their academic career and future. Okay, so they might feel that if I have a mental health condition, then it will damage my career prospects as a whole. And friends and teachers, they will evaluate me in negative way if they know about my diagnosis. And even they might see the condition of seeking help as sign of weakness. So these are the common feelings that the medical students might have that led them not to seek mental health treatment. And the other things that they might be having is that they might not feel that psychological and psychiatrist help or treatment, they might help them in uh, curing their illness. Okay, so however, these mental health conditions, they are not rare in medical professions. As I already told you, that no one is immune to these conditions, but in some conditions, the students might feel that I'm a medical student, so how can I have anxiety, or how can I have depression? I may not be having those. Probably this is only because of stress that I'm having exam after a few weeks. That may be the result of this condition. So in that case, they may avoid seeking treatment, and other thing, they might fear that once they have illness, they might not recover fully, and so with that fear, they might avoid uh, getting professional help, and they indulge in their activities. At the same time, the illness gets more severe, and maybe if when it is severe enough, they are then compelled to seek treatment. So I think these are all the factors that affect the medical students from seeking the professional help. As you told, that the researchers even have shown that there is high prevalence of anxiety and depressive symptoms in medical students. I think this is the cause being more workload and the some sort of routine environment, and having less time for their family and society as a whole.
Sir, I want to add something to this.
Yeah.
I have seen my friends who went for the counseling or went to a psychiatrist and then have improved um, magnanimously, like in a huge amount, and they have personally felt like going for the therapy or going for the counseling was the best decision that they made. So from this platform, I want to urge everyone who's listening to us that they must definitely seek help if they think that they need some kind of help, and no one will come and judge you, but I think that anyone who will know about this will definitely come and pat your back that you have done a great job.
Exactly, and even they should understand that even if they have to use medicine for some certain duration, these medicine are not usually habit forming, and these are used for some specific duration only. Later they can be stopped, and they can live their normal life completely as normal before.
Yes, thank you, sir, for that encouraging words. So we have learned about mental issues, and we know that sometimes mental issues, these are not only limited to mood disorders and psychotic breakdown, but it can also go into extremes of taking one's life. Suicides are increasing more
Yeah.
and more, and this pandemic has proven how fragile we as a human being are when it comes to uncertain times like this. It's an irony, right? Like in this pandemic, suicide has taken more lives than the virus itself. And the latest data I read was since the day of the lockdown in Nepal, we can report 19 suicides per day. So, any first instance, if I happen to be the person someone is calling before that final step to committing suicide, is there any way I can know about this? Or if I am that in that position, what should I do?
Okay, in this case, yes, we should know that suicide is an important aspect which is often linked with depression. It is said that more than 50% of suicide are because of depression until proved otherwise. However, when we talk about mental health issues, we should also ask about suicidal thought. Whether we are talking about anxiety or depression or psychosis, any condition, we should be asking about suicidal thoughts, because this is not going to increase the risk of individual developing those thoughts, or if they have thoughts, acting on those. So we should we should ask about the suicidal ideation, and if anyone gives you hint in verbal or written that he's having suicidal thoughts, then this is the time to act. You should now act now. So first of all, you should look for the warning signs. Individual might be telling somebody that I'm going to kill myself, or I wish I were dead, or I wish I wasn't born. So in that case, if possible, you should not leave him or her alone. Don't leave him alone. And if you are not with the person at that time, then you should encourage him or her to call a hotline number. So every country, they have a suicide hotline number. Even in our country, Nepal, we have different hotline numbers. Here in Kathmandu, we have number of TUTS, teaching hospital. Then there is NGO called TPO Nepal, then mental hospital, and even some psychotherapists or psychologists. They usually give their personal number also to be used. So you should encourage the person to call a suicide hotline number, and you should offer help to person to get assistance and support. So the suicide is that individual is having some severe pain. It is not that he does not love his life. It is not that relatives and families. but because of some unbearable pain, the individual is having feeling of I should commit suicide, or no, I should just quit this. I will not commit suicide. I need. So in that case, you should give some words of support that might be enough to help him live his life. So you should encourage him to talk. In that case, you should encourage him to talk and acknowledge his feelings. Do not scold him. Do not be judgmental, and you just listen to him and ask him to talk more. So at the same time, you should try to find out whether somebody is near to him or hers, or maybe relatives, his friends, or some security force, police personnel. So you should inform them and then manage accordingly. So most important thing is you need to talk to them and ask them to seek some professional help through suicide hotline number. And once this is done, the individual can avoid suicide, and later he can seek professional help with a therapist and talk in details what are these problems. In many instances, it happens in that suicide occurs because of the impulsive act, not because the individual is depressed throughout the period and commits suicide. In many instances, it is impulsive act. So if you could prevent that impulse for a certain duration, then maybe you will not commit suicide the next time. You will not attempt next time. So I have made some sort of formula. So to remember this, okay. Uh, Even it is mentioned in some of the literature. So what you should do is A, B, C, D, E, F formula. Okay, A is you should ask about some issues whether he or she is having. You talk to him, and you acknowledge his or her feelings. Don't be judgmental. Don't scold him, or don't behave in a rude way. Oh no, you should not commit suicide. So you should acknowledge the feelings. Feelings. And at the same time, you should be there to support him or her, and you should connect. See for connect, and don't ignore the subtle signs. Don't ignore the subtle signs that the client is having. Okay, so he might be getting some hints, and don't promise secrecy. In some of the instances, the people may feel tell that if you tell me, I'll keep these that you are having these thoughts as secret. I'll not tell to anyone. So don't promise secrecy. You encourage him to talk and later on follow up. So that is A, B, C, D, E, F formula. That would be helpful to prevent individual.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the ABCDF formula, and we'll try to implement this whenever we encounter our friends as well, or even apply it to ourselves if we ever come across those situations. And I think when we are talking about suicide, there's a fine line that we draw between having a mental illness and going towards that extreme action that is suicide. So as you said, that it's an impulsive act. So just out of context about so many things that have been talked about in social media nowadays, and it's some of our friends who have sent this question as well, and they really wanted to know about this as well. So there are many philosophies that we follow nowadays, and we have been open to so many different things. And when the science and technology is advancing, we have been so much aware about the idea of this nihilism that has been coming up, that something about life seems meaningless, and we have started diving deeper into understanding our existence. And so the recent suicide of the actor Sushant Singh Rajput as well, he seemed to be a very scientifically aligned person who would understand human consciousness, who could understand the cosmos, the quantum physics. Even he seemed to be a person who could talk about life and death for hours. So if we suffer from nihilism, or if we understand those philosophies of life, and we go into this thought process about confusion of our existence, and if we are in that state, then how can we as a person counteract those thoughts, and how can we find the motive to live on? Or was it different in case of Sushant, who was so wise, or was his suicide also an impulsive act, if you as a psychiatrist has to analyze?
Okay, I feel that like mental Illness or having suicidal ideation is not a sign of weak or fragile mind. So it means that the individual is going through some unbearable pain, or he just doesn't see other way out. Okay, in case of Sushant, it is difficult to comment as there are many controversies surrounding. But what I would like to tell is that it is possible for someone like Sushant having those scientific ideas, alignments towards science, quantum physics, and everything. Uh, but again, uh, it is not impossible for him to not to have suicidal ideation and carry out. There are controversies and sorted out. Maybe that will be clear in coming days.
Definitely, his death has disturbed many of us who had known him or who just knew him after whatever had happened. And thank you so much for giving some insights into this as well. So here I want to know something like what sort of societal construct is pushing us towards these mental conditions like depression or even suicidal ideation, and how can the societal model that we can create be helpful in battling this out?
First of all, I would like to share some facts about our society that uh, usually we have joint or extended families, and it is said that these families they are more supportive to the individuals having some mental health issues as compared to other countries where they have nuclear families. Though we are having such trends recently, but again we used to have joint families with our grandparents, grandmothers, uncle, aunt, and all family members. So in those families, the individual is more immune to these factors, developing suicidal ideation, thought, and carrying out those acts, because they can share their feelings with somebody who is close to him or her, and usually even they have some sort of education and practical education in different aspects of life from their grandparents and other family members. So the positive aspect is this, whereas at the same time the societal construct as you said, uh, which could force individual in taking decisive action that lead to suicide, maybe discrimination based on different factors like caste, religion, and even our socio-cultural or financial status, let's say, because the gap between the working people, low middle class family and higher class, and even the uh, different people working in different areas, they have very high financial issues. Okay, they are very they are not financially equal, so maybe that also leads to some sort of uh, difficulties that lead them to carry out suicidal acts. And even in individual level there are different stressors that will push individual to carry suicidal act. The stressors may be related to financial or educational or some this may be interpersonal issues with some of his close partners or somebody else. So these I think these are all the constructs that uh, push individual towards some severe form of mental illness that finally lead to suicide.
Thank you so much, sir. And I remember that the first time we went to clinics, even at Sri Virendra Hospital, we were told that the key to being a physician is understanding your patient and being able to put yourself in others' shoes. That is demonstrating empathy. But we, as being millennials, or what people of our times are called the millennials, we are so much focused on our credentials, our potentials of what we have to show in this world, or even social media advocacies, or even like forming a profile which is maybe kind of like displayable to this world and where you can come out with your potential. So when we are drooling towards developing ourselves, then we always feel that empathy is the key. So many a times I've also seen that sometimes we fail to understand the situations from their shoes, and we can't imply or implement that empathy in our lives. So when we understand that empathy is the key, how can we work towards developing this value as a clinician or as an individual as well?
Okay, I think you have already answered what empathy is. Okay, empathy is putting yourself in others' shoes, as you told. I feel the same. So, but you should always consider the boundary between the client and the therapist. Okay, there must be a boundary. If the boundary is maintained, then the therapeutic relation exists, and you can treat the client in a better way. However, if there is some breach boundary, either through some personal relation or financial relation or some other means, then this sort of therapeutic relation will not exist, and you cannot treat the individual better. So yes, empathy is keeping yourself in individual shoes and feeling what he or she is feeling, and accordingly you can make a treatment plan as to what you should focus on in treatment. But at the same time, you should keep some sort of distance. That is, we call therapeutic distance to avoid breach in the therapy.
Thank you, sir. So when we finalized that we are going to have this session with you, we shared in our groups, and there was overwhelming response. We got many queries that they are directed towards you, and some of them I think we have already addressed during this conversation as well. But there are a few more, and I would really like to ask them to you. So here's the first one, and it says that it is so overwhelming to stay positive, do yoga, meditation at times. How can we overcome this?
So the basic thing is that you should take the things in natural way. Talking about yoga meditation, you should not take it as a compulsion. You should make it some sort of routine in your life, so that you'll practice it daily or some during some periods periodically, so that you don't feel that this is a compulsion. Okay, one thing is that. Another is that you should develop positive coping mechanisms. So suppose if you are having an exam after a week, so in that case you should continue studying at least a few hours a day, having some time for relaxation, some time for maybe music, art, or talking to your near ones. I mean, not only focusing on your studies throughout the period. And some of the people, they have habit of reading only during times of exam. So in that case also it leads to some sort of stress, and the exam they will not be able to perform. In the degree of stress is required to perform well, but at the same time, if the level of stress increases, then your performance is also decrease. So let's not take these things as compulsion that we need to perform this daily. Or what will happen if I cannot perform this? So if it start taking in this way, then maybe it will carry out in an effective manner. Okay, I think that answers your question.
Thank you so much, sir. And many a times as a society, we are always limited. And I think that might also propagate our mental illness. So when we think about what our behaviors are or what our thought processes of life should be like, and the societal thoughts or of morality, of good behavior, if that kind of is not in a match, then it will create a stress too. So this is a question from one of our friends. So if those thoughts of the society and of our inner values don't match, how can we as a person cope with that unmatched thought of the societal construct and of our inner mind, so that we can move forward in our life?
Okay, I think for this you need to understand the concept of id, ego, and superego, which was initially given by Sigmund Freud. So what id says is that it is based on pleasure principle. Whatever you get, you should take it. You should feel pleasure with it. That means you must experience pleasure. That you are bound to get pleasure from it. hierarchy principle says that your ego says that you should and then you should take whatever the situation gives. And superego tells you that you not only believe in the pleasure principle and the reality principle, you should also focus on the morality principle. For example, I'll give you an example. Uh, if you are going in suppose for a dinner with your friend, and if you see at the time you are seeing some people outside restaurant were asking for food and money. So after you go in the restaurant, you suppose you ask for the food and take the food yourself. Suppose you snatch food from the uh, cook, or let's say you snatch the food and you even do not pay. So that is pleasure principle. You are acting on a pleasure principle. You only for yourself. However, if you pay the money and take the food, and uh, then it is reality principle. This is uh, ego. Okay, and super ego is that you feel that the people outside restaurant, they must be hungry. So we should not only feed ourselves, we should be feeding them also. And if you take food to them, then that is principle of morality. So these factors, every individual have this sort of personalities, and these factors, ego and superego, and based on different circumstances, these needs or ego, they come into play. Okay, and usually the condition of mental illness and different problems, psychological problems, they arise because of your fulfilled dreams, wishes, and different thoughts in your id. So if you manage those thoughts or impulses in a positive way, then you can avoid having some form of mental illness in life. So I think this is quite difficult to understand, but this is a basic concept which shapes the personality of every individual, and this personality helps us to uh, act accordingly in different situations.
Thank you, sir. It has been a lot of learning today, and I think learning like this, day by day, with every action, observing everything, will move into our professional career as well. So I think we ought to understand that along the way we'll go through many stressors, and there might come times where will find it very hard to cope up. Is there any mental health advice you'd like to give to us?
So uh, I think in medical career, the most important thing is you should have some sort of routine. Okay, if you study 1 hour a day for at least 6 months, then maybe you'll find it more easy to give an exam rather than studying completely 20 hours a day for 2 to 3 months. So that is very different thing. Okay, so and the other thing is that you should at the same time you should take breaks. You should give time for uh, relaxation, music, and art, which whatever you are interested in. So I think these factors have to be noted, and we should not be. The main important thing is that we should learn the things. We should give exam. We are bound to pass the exam. We should get certificates as per the current education system. But at the same time, we should not be that competitive that we are always stressed. I should top. I should get the maximum marks in the this subject. That I should be awarded gold medal in this subject. So you should not be feeling that way. It will cause stress in one or other way, and as you have studied that stress increases the level of steroids, corticosteroids in your body, and it will negatively impact even your physical health. So take it easy that you are going through your medical career. One day you will pass out and you'll be a good doctor.
Thank you so much, sir. So your advice will be valuable as we go through becoming physicians or doctors in our life. So one interesting thought that came into my mind, and it's not that I personally have not gone through stressors. When from preclinical years moving to clinical years, I've been in a lot of stress, and there have been times I've cried my eyes out even at the hospital as well. So I'm sharing this personally here, and I don't find it a stigma to share it even in this platform too. And when yesterday we were taught about delusional disorders, it was very interesting to find out that even in certain circumstances, I think every one of us has those delusions, and going through such a stress, even I'm happy that I've coped up with that situation and I'm here today. So I'd like to ask you, how do we know we personally need to seek help, or where do we draw that line where we find that we'll be fine coping it on our own, or when do we know that we need to seek help of a psychiatrist personally?
Okay, in this case, you should know that every psychological condition, okay, as you said, there is a very thin line between normality and abnormality. There is a very thin line. As such, there is no perfect definition of what is normal in mental health. There is no such a definition. It depends on the individual circumstances, and we do have some guidelines. Okay, and these guidelines are based on reports, books, so and American Psychological Association. You must have heard about ICD-10 and DSM. So, when you speak about any of the psychological condition, be it anxiety or depression, persistent delusional disorder, or psychosis or schizophrenia, the individual must suffer from the prominent symptoms that are mentioned in the criteria for at least some specific duration. Yeah, we may have those symptoms or problems for a transient period during different periods of our life, because we are human and there are certain changes in our brain going throughout, and this can lead to some of the changes in some ways. Okay, but this doesn't mean that we are having those mental health issues. But when individuals develop the symptoms, and the symptoms or problems, they're causing impairment in your daily activities, like your study, your sleep, appetite, and your relationship with other people. So if these factors are affected, then it is the time that you start seeking help, because not all problems require treatment. Some of the conditions might be mild, or they may be moderate or severe, and the mild conditions, they can be treated even with simple counseling or sharing your views or ventilating your ideas. However, the condition is moderate to severe, then that is the time you should seek professional help with a psychiatrist for a medicine, for treatment.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure to have you here, and taking presentations or taking your classes and going into psychiatry, to having you here and hearing from you and discussing with you all the personal problems that we as medical students face, and hearing your insights was really, really valuable, and it will be valuable for all of us. Thank you for all your efforts of disseminating this message, and it was a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prathana, and thank you, Manita. It was my pleasure that you invited me in this forum to have some of my ideas and views regarding mental illness. Thank you.
And this brings us to the end of today's session. Write to us. Let us know how do you like it. We'd love to have some feedbacks. We'll meet soon in further episodes. Till then, have a good time. Bye-bye.